recording, Todd, and then we can get started, and hopefully Eric will join us in a moment.
Sure thing. Just give me one moment and I'll get that kicked off. So hang on.
Recording in progress.
There we are.
Thanks. All right. Hi, everyone. This is a planning board meeting, Wednesday, March 8th, 2023. We'll start with the roll call for attendance. Todd, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure thing. Begin a roll call vote. I'll begin with Pete Driscoll.
I'm here.
Eric. I don't see him. We'll come back. Jim.
Present.
Very good. Bob.
Present.
And Mike.
And Eric
Mike.
is on now, Todd.
Sure. And I'll also call, now that I see you, Eric, are you here, good sir?
Yep, here.
Okay. All present and attending.
All right, great. Thank you. First agenda item, town planner report. So if you want to take it away, Todd. Yeah.
Sure thing, sure thing. It's been a, calling it a busy week is kind of an understatement to call busy weeks. We've had an inordinate amount of material coming in also for existing applications, as well as some dribs and drabs coming from projective applications that are coming up now. They'll be coming in likely at the beginning of April, I would say. It's like when they'll have some of these applications have their materials together, and they'll be able to get you all apprised and when those submittals are complete and accurate. Aside from that, everything else is humming along as it ought to be. Both master plan and other relevant projects are moving along at a pretty good clip. I look forward to being able to report more on those. Also, getting to that, I would like to take this moment to remind members of the board that we do have a joint appearance with the Board of Selectmen coming up on the 16th, a week from tomorrow. All of that agenda will be assembled either next day or two, and I'll be sure to share that with you also. It's likely that our component of that meeting will be around the 7:30 time slot or so. But I'll be able to give you more data on that as it comes in and as it's fully assembled. But aside from that, everything goes well.
That's in regard to what, Keys Farm?
No. This is a joint meeting there for the MVP, the Municipality Vulnerability Preparedness, and related projects there. But yeah, again, I will be sharing that agenda with everyone as soon as it's fully assembled.
Okay.
Great, thanks.
Sure.
Okay, we'll move on to the first of our discussion items on the agenda, which is a status update for the Keys Farm subdivision on Hudson Road.
Sure.
We have our town council with us tonight, but I don't know, Todd, do you want to provide an update?
Sure. I can provide some exposition here for those that perhaps weren't present for the meeting last week. Just so everyone knows and we're all on the same page, the board voted on February 22nd to find this developer in default of its subdivision performance agreement. I went ahead and sent notice of the board's vote to the developer on February 24th, a couple days after, and we provided them 5 business days to present an offer to cure for the default that's occurred. The developer's counsel acknowledged receipt of the notice, which is great. The developer did not offer a cure within that time, and our town council is now taking steps to enforce the bond with the surety that's attached there. And if there's any further update on here, as mentioned previously, Council Falk is present and attending. So if I would hand this over to Council Falk to see if he has any updates on top of that.
No, Todd, that was a good summary. I don't have anything additional to offer.
Okay. Thank you, Todd and Attorney Falk for that. Are there any? We don't really want to belabor this. I think we provided the update that the only update we have available at this time. If anyone has a question before we move on to the next discussion item, otherwise we'll move on. I'll just Give a moment. Yeah, I see someone with your hand up. If you want to identify yourself, name and address, happy to answer or at least entertain a quick question.
Hi, this is Liz Hutchins from 75 Moderator Way. This is just a quick question I'd like clarified for the record. If the developer was voted to be in default of this agreement, I guess, can the board clarify the procedure for our road acceptance if the developer ends up completely outside of this scope and the town ends up with the bond? What is the procedure for getting our road accepted in that case?
I'm not sure that I have enough info to talk about the specific steps of the procedure. But the bond is basically an insurance policy, right? And the first step would be to for the town to try to get, the money to complete the outstanding items, and the town would then have to facilitate the, once that happens, I don't know the steps in the process and the timing for that, then figure out what the outstanding items are and figure out how to get them done with the money that is available. I think we can probably provide more updates and details on that in the future, but we're only at the very initial step of the process, which is, what Todd updated. We found the developer in the fall, and now there's legal steps that need to happen before anything else is going to happen.
Understood. So I guess to kind of just follow up on that. So then if the town does end up procuring the bond, however that happens, when the town now has the bond and they're going to move forward with going about the process to fix the road, is the town in the custody of, is the road in the custody of the town at that point that the bond has now been passed to the town?
No.
So i.e., if something happens on this road, who's liable at that point?
That question I don't know the answer to. I just know that it's not.
Yeah, maybe town council could
automatically
answer that.
The road, I would defer to our council to see if any info on that question.
Sure, the decision to default the developer and to pursue the bond doesn't change anything with respect to custody of the subdivision way. It's still a private way. It's not a
No, I
town way.
understand that today. I'm just asking totally prospectively. This is not specifically even about Keys Farm. This is about any development in Bolton. If Bolton gets custody of that bond and has to now do the work, at that point, when does the road become the town's responsibility?
It would become the town's responsibility when we go through the public way acceptance process through this board and ultimately town meeting.
So
Once that takes place, that's at that point, it would become a town public way.
So to clarify, even though the developer could be at fault, the town could accept the bond, retain all the monies, so the developer is essentially no longer part of the town. He's no longer responsible for this because you have the bond as the town. We're in like a purgatory until we get accepted and things get fixed. Is that what I'm hearing? So nobody's responsible for the road at that point? Because the developer clearly would no longer be responsible for the road because the bond is with the town, but the town is saying they're not responsible for the road. So who's responsible for the road?
Again, the vote by the board doesn't change anything on the legal status of the way. It doesn't shift responsibilities. It just starts the process for the board and the town to take on the work of completing the subdivision.
So the developer would still be liable if something happened. He's still responsible for paying taxes on the land
That's
until
correct.
the road is accepted.
That is correct. It doesn't shift any legal obligations. It just starts the process for the town through the subdivision control law to complete the work at the subdivision, which to date has not been completed.
Okay. This is the kind of information that's really helpful, I think, to all the developments in this town that are trying to understand the process. So we're getting very disjointed pieces of information. So this is helpful. Though still doesn't really make any sense. So the town is going to be, has the potential, once they get the bond, to be performing the work, even though the developer is still technically liable and responsible for this parcel of land.
That's correct. That's the process that the state subdivision control law sets forth in order to allow developers to complete subdivisions before they've completed the ways. They may secure the work through a bond, and if they don't complete the work, then the town may take action under the bond, but it's purely a completion of the subdivision way process and is separate and distinct from the acceptance of the road as a public way.
So can you accept the road then as a public roadway without having the development subdivision completed? Because my understanding from speaking to multiple people in the town government is that the road acceptance is technically a separate concept from subdivision completion.
That is correct.
So the entire subdivision does not necessarily need to be completed in order for the road to be accepted at a town meeting by the town.
As a legal matter, no, but as a practical matter, having the road recommended for acceptance, and the town taking it on as a public way, typically that wouldn't go forward until the work is completed.
But it is possible.
And without as-built plans in hand, which in this case, the town doesn't have, it's difficult to accept the public way, because we don't know the bounds of the public way, and we don't know that the work is completed and what the final layout was. We
Right,
have the
understood.
plans that were set forth and approved by the board, but we don't actually know how they were finally completed until we have an as-built plan. We don't have that now, and it's really difficult in this day and age to do a public way acceptance without an as-built plan.
Understood. So the as-built plan, I'm assuming, would be priority number one for the town then coming in, because realistically, the town has no concept of where this neighborhood even stands from a compliance perspective right now. They have a lot of feedback from a lot of people years ago, but years have passed, things have changed, and there's really no concept at this point as to this, what status our neighborhood is in. So could someone confirm that an as-built would be a priority for this project moving forward?
It would certainly be a priority, but one of the, probably most likely one of the first things that we would want to do is have our engineer, our consulting firm, take a look at the current status, right, versus the proposed, the plans that were accepted, and see where we are.
Right, understood.
And then, these are outstanding items that need to be complete to bring the road to compliance, and then, start working on those, and then eventually, get to an as-built a plan that would also be reviewed and accepted. So, but that, yes, that would be part of the process, yeah.
And then that piece you just spoke about with the engineer coming up with these lists and whatever feelings about what needs to be completed, who prioritizes that, and how do we decide what parts of that are you guys will need to accept variances for? Because it was very evident 2 years ago, 3 years ago now, when Danielle was part of this board, that there were various and sundry things that were wrong, that the planning board knew were wrong, and that you were just going to accept as a variance. So I really hope, for the sake of this neighborhood and for the sake of everybody on this phone call right now, that this entire board is aware of those discussions 2-3 years ago, because I don't really believe it's appropriate for those things to change. When I talked to Todd late last week, I asked him the question how these variances are going to be decided, and there was really no indication. So is that like a planning board decision? You guys get this information, and then you sit down and you say, okay, this wasn't done to plan, but we can accept that. That's fine. We're not going to fix that. Like, how does that whole discussion go? I'm sorry for belaboring this, but honestly, there's just no clarity as to this process at all.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't been through this type of thing, recently, or maybe, I don't even know, in Bolton, you know, we certainly have the records of all the past, you know, things that came up, whether they were from residents or from engineering reports at the time, and could refer back to those. We probably want to see kind of where we stand now. There are some limitations on the way the bond money can be used, right? It's for specific, you know, the bond is for specific road construction items, so it's not like you can take the money and use it for something that
Right.
you know, isn't on there. So that's depending on what the issues are. So we would, I mean, kind of at the early stages of this process, there's probably a lot of steps that need to be gone through, you know, legally, until we can even kind of have those discussions. I don't know the timing on that, but certainly one of the first things we'd have to kind of do is look at, you know, current state, right? Once we got to the ability to do that, is where we are, you know, and look at everything, how much money is there, what the cost would be, what needs to be done, and then go from there. I mean, ultimately, the town, you know, as a whole, it doesn't want to accept a road that has deficiencies that are going to have to be dealt with, you know, in the future, right? So the goal would be to remedy anything that is needs to be remedied before moving forward with the process.
Understood. So. Okay,
Is there a point at which the town would never have to accept the road?
yeah, I mean, the town at some point does have to accept the road, right? You can't just be like, well, your trees are dead and we gave back the money for the trees, so sorry, right? I mean, I know that's like an extreme example, but.
Yeah. So I'm pretty sure that legally the town is under no obligation to accept the road. Very honestly, we are not under a legal obligation. The town is not under a legal obligation to accept the road.
Okay, so the developer could screw up a neighborhood so badly that the town couldn't fix it and would say, sorry, folks, we blew this up, but oh well. Is that what I'm hearing? You don't
Well,
think there'd
so-
be sort of any legal implication on that?
I mean, ultimately, any road acceptance decision has to go through town meeting, right? Which is a vote of, I believe it's a majority vote from all the residents in the town that go to town meeting. And so it's really up to town residents ultimately. From a planning board perspective, you know, we have a portion of that process. And what we want to do, what we try to do is to get, you know, to do the process and get through what's on our plate to the best of the ability, so we can go to the town meeting and say to the residents, we recommend that you accept this road, right? Other town departments, the select board, you know, all have weigh into the decision. So, but ultimately, it's the residents of the town at a town meeting that would vote based on all the information provided to them, whether or not to accept a road or not. And as a piece of that from the planning board, we want to be able to go and, you know, vote to say we accept the as-built plans, we recommend accepting the road. We go to the other town departments with that, they have their feedback, and eventually it migrates to a town meeting vote. Ultimately, the town residents could vote it down.
Right, the town residents, but I guess my point is, like, I feel very sad that I'm about to say this, but I do feel that the planning board could easily stalemate this neighborhood. I mean, everybody knows exactly what situation we're in. We know that there's some pretty bad infrastructure. And I think once you guys start to investigate, it's going to be a lot more than the bond. I think we all know that. So I
Yeah,
guess I just want to make sure that the planning board is presenting to the residents of this neighborhood an accurate perception of, first of all, the probability of this project even ever getting accepted. And I know you're going to say, well, we don't know yet because we haven't had anyone look at it, but we like that needs to happen as quickly as possible. And I understand you guys are going through a legal situation right now trying to get that bond, but I mean, this neighborhood has turned into an absolute disaster. And I think the board, just as outside of Keys Farm and outside of Century Mill, the planning board really needs to take a hard look at how they're managing active projects and the oversight of them. Because a lot of the things that are created problems now that are preventing us from getting accepted are things that the residents had identified to the planning board during construction, active construction, and could have been dealt with at that time. And we were told, we'll just deal with it at the end at road acceptance once we get the as-built. And now we're in a situation where you don't have the as-built because the builder has walked away, which I don't think anybody, except for the residents of this neighborhood, thought that was going to happen. So I'm done with my commentary. Thank you for answering all my questions.
Yeah, sure. Like, you know, it's our goal to continue working to, you know, move forward with this project, given the legal options available to us. And, you know, we'll continue, you know, if there's updates, if meaningful updates that we are able to provide, we will put an agenda item on our future meeting, and we'll provide updates when we have something to provide.
One last thing I just wanted to add. I do believe that the builder, i.e. Keys Farm, whatever the representatives, did propose a settlement to give you part of the bond so that they could walk away from this situation. And you guys could have that part of the bond and move forward very rapidly. Is there a reason why the town decided not to accept that proposal?
So, you know, the one thing I can say is it's not a cash bond, it's an insurance policy. So it's not like we have a pile of money that we can just have. I'd have to defer to, you know, our town council to elaborate any more on that in terms of anything can be shared.
I don't have anything more to offer on that. It was a decision by the board.
So the board decided not to accept that?
But yes, it was a planning board vote. Well, the planning board voted to find the developer in default.
No, that's not what I asked, though. I feel like we're missing a piece here. I know for a fact, because I've seen the email, that Keys Farm offered $85,000, I believe, to the town of Bolton, so that he could be done with the project and Bolton could take that $85,000 and start moving towards whatever end you have. Now, I know we have about $110,000 in bond right now. So yes, that is, you know, a chunk of change that would be taken, but it would at least alleviate and expedite the situation that we're in right now. So I'm just curious why the town is choosing to get into further litigation, right, at taxpayers, using our taxpayers' money, versus potentially accepting like that something. I'm just really surprised because typically I feel like the town errs a little bit more conservatively. So, but you're telling me that the planning board voted to not accept that $85,000. Is that correct? Whose decision was that?
As I noted, that the bond is an insurance policy, right? It's not cash. So
correct. I guess I understand.
So it's not like we were offered a cash offer, right? So there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of question what we would, you know, how that would even work out. I mean, the offer, I don't think was even, you know, I don't want to get us into any more difficulty legally than we can, but I mean, it just, the bond is an insurance policy, right? That's held by an insurance company.
Understood. So you'd have to make a claim for $85,000 against his insurance.
I would assume
In that case, with his proposal. I'm just trying to understand what the town's been offered and what they're deciding to do. Because again, we live here. This is my taxpayer money that's paying for Brian to sit here with us tonight. So I'm just trying to get an understanding of like what the town's options were and what they decided to do. And I've been told that the town voted to not accept it. So I'm curious who voted to not accept it.
It wasn't during
It wasn't during a meeting I've seen anyway. And we've been on most of these meetings. So you can see on my communication that I'm receiving from the town does not seem to be consistent with what I'm hearing at this meeting tonight, which frankly feels shady. So that's what I'm trying to understand.
I think the vote was held during an executive session. due to potential litigation. I wasn't at that executive session. There was a majority of the board there. But that is when the vote was taken to find the developer in default.
But I'm not asking who found the developer in default. I'm asking who voted to say to not negotiate with the builder. So what I'm hearing is what,
Mr. Chairman, this pertains to a potential litigation matter. It was a subject of an executive session by the board. I really don't recommend getting too much further into this. There was a potential litigation matter, and you now have a public vote by the planning board to find the developer in default.
okay, great, thank you.
Sure. Thanks for that's kind of what I was trying to say as well. Okay, well, thank you for the comments and thanks Attorney Falk for your input. I'd like to move on to the next discussion item, which is update on status of Century Mill Estates subdivision. So I saw Todd an email from earlier today. I know there was we were waiting on a check for from the developer for the as-built plans based on the estimate we got from our peer reviewer, and it seemed like that check got lost in the process. But as of earlier today, the developer provided an email that had a canceled previous check, provided a scanned copy of a check that was sent today for overnight delivery tomorrow with the tracking information there to your attention. So we have that, and hopefully then tomorrow we will have the check for the 2,400 that we can put into our peer review account.
To the chair, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that's correct. Just to provide a backstory or the autopsy of the situation. We are waiting for a check for $2,400 to arrive from the developer to pay for the engineer review for the as-built that we secured. I suggested to the developer that these funds be wired to the town, but because we haven't received the check. However, as you mentioned, he did submit a scanned copy of a check that he said will be overnight to us. And trust me, once I receive that check, I'll make sure to let you all know that we're in receipt of it, and I'll begin to process that check as soon as we have it. So that's a good part to get to kind of that cat's way through where we're at now. We're still waiting to hear from the developer to take steps as to get the project completed and to have the subdivision ways accepted in the future. That's what the 2,400 will help with. I do believe it makes sense to continue working with the developer, Mr. Benenson, to complete any outstanding work that will remain once we receive the as-built review from Niche. And once we have that punch list, then we can begin completing some of the work that we have that remains outstanding. So just to bring us back up to the current state.
Yeah, thanks. And I assume I know that we're probably closing in on the time for another week or two when it should kind of provided their estimate of when they thought they would have comments, but we haven't heard anything from them yet.
That's correct. We haven't heard anything as of yet from Niche, though they still have a good week to 2 weeks or so based on their initial estimation at outset. So once I hear back from them, I will make sure that everyone is kept in the loop and apprised.
Okay, great. Well, hopefully, having the check, the money in our account will, once they reach out, we'll be able to provide that, and they can provide their comments, and we can then go from there.
Exactly. Once I receive the invoice, it'll be paid same day.
Okay. I don't think there's anything else then to update on Century Mills unless anyone has any brief questions or comments.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Vince LaRosa, 73 Olson. Chair. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, So I saw that this was for a finding of default, so does this email or overnight at the 24th hour again change the conversation, or are you still having a conversation about finding the builder in default?
Well, as Todd kind of said, kind of echoes my feelings that we are trying to continue working with the developer as they have been at least somewhat responsive and being willing to contribute money, or not contribute money, that's not the right way to say it at all, being willing to continue their obligations to pay for things that they're required to pay for. Given that we have very little money remaining in the bond for this project, we want to try to continue working with the developer as much as possible to get things completed. And so, I agree that, the late hour, we asked for this check. I wasn't at the last planning board meeting with the one a month ago, right? And it was, oh, we'll get the check. So, okay, maybe the check, got misplaced or whatever. That's a little frustrating. But so given that it sounds like we're going to have the money in our account tomorrow, I think the next step is, that allows us to pay for the feedback on the as-built plans, and then we'll be willing, we'll continue the conversation. We've put it on the agenda as consideration of default finding, as the agenda is posted in advance. And if we had heard nothing from the developer prior to this meeting and we still hadn't had the money, I think that changes the conversation a little bit. The biggest thing from my perspective from the planning board is, once we get the feedback on the as-built plans, which should also include, as we've requested, an estimate for any outstanding items that need to be done, right? If anything needs to be done, what our peer reviewer estimates it would cost, then we need to see how responsive the developer is to that. And if we get no response, or, nothing happens, I think then, it kind of directs our path forward.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, one last thing. I mean, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. I mean, we've been doing this for how many years? And I know you weren't on the last call, but I will tell you the residents were blindsided by the decision from the planning board that they had made a decision between the time we had felt that things were moving forward and a possible path forward to road completion and at least getting it on the agenda for the town meeting this year. And there was a decision made during that time period. Again, I know you weren't on the meeting. There was a decision made that it wasn't going to happen, and we were basically told that that's it, and we understood and respect your decisions. But we were made, at least I was made, to feel that there was a path forward, and that there was, although the board couldn't speak to it at the last meeting, that there was things in place that were going to be helping us with a plan forward. And it doesn't seem like really anything's changed from what I'm hearing. We're just expecting the builder to, turn around and do something different. So if I'm misinterpreting that, please tell me, but that's how I took the last meeting, that there was going to be something different. I was expecting to hear a little bit more tonight.
Yeah, I mean, you're correct. I wasn't on the last meeting, but I understand what was communicated. It ultimately kind of comes down to the timeline, right? Like, from my perspective, right, we haven't received feedback from our peer reviewer yet. The update, once they got the plans and had agreed to move forward, even though they hadn't been paid, they gave us an estimate of about a month, which came out to, I think, mid-March at the time, right, from when they provided that estimate. So, as Todd just mentioned, in the next couple of weeks, and that just doesn't, then we're up against the deadlines that are required by law. So it's sort of, we want to, there's no, like, it's not like the planning board wants to hold things up or anything. It's just we don't have what we need in time, right?
Yes.
And,
I understand.
the difference, just one more thing to add, you know, the difference between where we are this year and where we were a year ago when the town meeting deadline passed is that we now have a better legal path forward to find the developer in default because the deadline for completing the subdivision has passed without a request for an extension. So in my opinion, and I'm not speaking for the whole board, just my personal opinion, if we get to the point where we're getting nothing from the developer that we've requested and we're waiting on the developer, we have to move forward to, you know, to try to finish this, you know, in a different way. And I don't know the exact steps or timeline for that because we know we only have a limited amount of funds. But I think once we have the feedback from our peer reviewer, then we'll be able to sort of see better. But we're certainly not going to provide any more extensions to the developer for this project.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, last thing from me. I just, you know, first of all, thank you guys. I know we're in a, I'm sorry, I'm getting some feedback.
Thank you. I know we're. I'm sorry, I'm getting some feedback.
Can you hear me? I'm getting some feedback.
Yeah, it's better now. It's just
Okay. I know we're in a tough situation, and I know we all want the same thing here. I know we're in a tough situation with the amount of money in the bond. The only thing I would really want to stress here is, I think by just the pure fact, the developer was not on the last call. He's not on this call that I'm aware of, and he sent something at the 24th hour. It sounds like yesterday. Not a check, but just proof that something's coming. This is typical. We've seen this for the last several years now. And I would ask you to be cautious that we're not at this point, at this time next year. And we're in the exact same situation again, because this has really been the pattern the last several years that we hear things they're going to get done and then they don't. So if there's a way we can get a timeline scheduled a little bit earlier and ask the developer to stick to the timeline, and we can get ahead of this a little bit earlier next year, maybe, there's no guarantees here, but maybe we can get this done. But I think expecting that the developer is going to do the work and waiting and getting to this point next year, we're going to be in the exact same spot.
Sure, understood, and appreciate your comments. You know, my perspective is if we get to the point where the developer is, you know, we can't make progress because of the developer, it sort of, I don't want to say forces our hand, but I mean, it's just, that's the only path, right? Right now, you know, unfortunately, you know, I wish we had that money sooner as we were promised it, but it's actually not holding anything up today, right? If Niche had come back to us, you know, 2 weeks ago and said, "Oh, I'm ready, but you got to pay me," well, that would be a little different story. So I think we just need to kind of keep an eye on this on a, you know, week by week basis and make sure we're making progress forward. I think it's going to be a lot. Once again, once we sort of see where we're at from the review of the as-built plan, it's going to give the planning board a lot more information that we're doing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, just comment on that in this chat. Appreciate your comments. And I agree the timelines have been really tight. And I think I made my frustrations known last meeting. Unfortunately, not the best man about how much I felt was lost between some of the communications and to respond to the town planner for coming up with a cost. There's many weeks that were lost. So I thought we were told.
Yeah, sorry, it's really hard to hear. It was kind of in and out. Looks like they've dropped out. Bad connection, perhaps.
Yeah, I'm hoping they reconnect.
Yeah, I think that was Mr. Balowitz. I couldn't quite hear him. So we can So, Mr. Ballas, is that you back on? We couldn't really hear you, if you were trying to. Was going away. Okay, well, maybe he's having,
Some connectivity issues, maybe.
the, connectivity issues, but if you can hear us and you wanna send us anything by email, we can, we always look at those and, you know, in terms of future updates, if, we'll certainly put this agenda item on the agenda. If there is a meaningful update on things to talk about, we'll put this on future updates. If for some reason, you know, we don't have anything to update at a particular meeting because we're waiting on something specific, we can provide, you know, that information by email to residents and not necessarily have an agenda item if there's nothing to discuss. But if there is, we'll certainly put it on the agenda. Okay, let's move on to our next item, which is a continuation of a public hearing. So this is a scenic road shade tree hearing for 7-8 Meadow Road, Assessor's Map 4D parcel 101. So I know it's been continued for a little bit of time, and I know also, Todd, we received a letter from the engineer with kind of a sequence of work, yeah, Mr. Proctor, I see you're on. If you want to kind of bring us up to speed, that'd be great.
Absolutely, thank you, and I apologize for my voice. I'm fighting a cold this evening, so please bear with me. And with your permission, I'll share my screen now so the board can see.
Hang on 1 second. Okay, you should be all set, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so as was mentioned, this is a continuation of a scenic road and shade tree hearing for lots 7 and 8 Meadow Road, which is Assessor's Map 4D parcels 101 and 101.1. We had appeared initially before your board, I believe back in October, at the second meeting in October, for a proposed shared driveway providing access to 2 lots on Meadow Road. There were several comments relative to obviously the tree removal, some drainage concerns on the driveway, the layout, the configuration. So in the past, I guess it's going on 4 months, we've had a handful of meetings, several meetings on site in the office with DPW director, the tree warden, the owner and applicant, Todd, Mr. Romer, relative to the layout and some of those drainage concerns. So this layout that is before you tonight is a result of all those meetings with those various people. The overall layout of the driveway has remained somewhat the same, primarily the same, given the site constraints with the wetland to the west of the site and the property line being close to the northeast of the property. However, we were able to reduce the number of trees that we requested to remove. Originally, it was 24. We've cut that back to 18. I realize it's still a big number. Unfortunately, there's not too many options here for where we can put this driveway. Some of the drainage issues that we've addressed, we've added a few drainage structures in the driveway, and this has been in coordination with the DPW to capture a lot of the stormwater coming down the driveway. In addition to that, upgrading of the stone wall, which is this dark line here. We've added a stormwater basin to capture a lot of the runoff coming down the road, as well as proposing some stone recharge trenches again to further capture some of that stormwater, preventing it going down towards Meadow Road. That's my very brief overview. Again, I apologize for my voice, but I'm happy to answer any questions or if you have any comments.
Just a question on the trees, and it's been a little while, just trying to remember. The ones you have circled in kind of a green highlighter, are those different than the other ones on the plan here?
Yes, sir. Those are the 6 that we are no longer proposing to remove. So those are the 6 that we are saving. from the original 24. And the others are the 18 that are proposed to come down.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Excuse me.
The question or clarification, Todd. The whatever it's called, the order of work, or the letter we got from
The work sequence, yeah.
the work sequence. Could you just provide a little? You said that was from a meeting, that not a planning board meeting, but a meeting at town hall. Can you just give us a little background to the board on what that is, and what that came out of? Just
Very good. Ryan, if you wouldn't mind, can you pull that up for us?
Oh,
As you're-
yeah, absolutely.
You have screen share.
Yep.
Thank you, sir. So as you can see, that's here. I went ahead and forwarded this to all the planning board members. So this particular meeting was held alongside Ryan Proctor, as well as the applicant, Mr. Al Hassan, and representing the town was also the DPW director, Randy Heglin, myself, and also member Bob Romer was there as well, to go over some of the initial engineering concerns and the sticky wickets of this particular project, and how some of these erosion and sediment control issues, as well as drainage, can be directed ideally away from the street line and out of the public right of way. So as you can see on here, there's an 11-point plan. Ryan, you can speak to the individual particulars here, but I encourage all interested parties to read this work sequence here.
It's I'd say pretty typical of a residential house construction project. So the start would be to clear the lot, remove the trees within the limit of work, rough grade the site, and then at that point move forward with the house construction, the utilities, and so on. The only thing I'll note here, and this was something that came directly out of the meeting that we had at town hall last week, was to construct some of those stormwater measures along Meadow Road early on in the construction process, and treat them as temporary sediment basins, such that we're not running into the drainage concerns during construction, similar to what's happening up the road. So that is something that we've added into this construction sequence. And then at the end of construction, those will be cleared of any sediment and then stabilized with lumen seed at that point. And that includes some of the slopes alongside of the driveway, not just the stormwater controls.
Okay, thanks. And Todd or Bob, if you were at that meeting, does this kind of answer whatever questions came up that led to this request?
Yeah, I wasn't at the last meeting. I had COVID and couldn't attend.
That's right.
I think not with respect to the sequence, construction sequence, but going back to the drawing that Ryan brought up earlier, I continue to be concerned about building private drainage infrastructure on the public taking. And we did discuss the implications of that. Who has control of that? Who's going to be assured of maintenance? And to the best of my knowledge, there continues to be concern about what that infrastructure is, how it would be controlled. I guess my personal perspective, and this doesn't necessarily represent other members of the board, but I'm really very reluctant to have private drainage infrastructure in the public taking.
I would also like to add to the chair, if I may.
Yeah, please.
I'd like to add that our DPW director expressed similar and almost identical concerns at that meeting last week. I apologize for placing you there accidentally, Bob. But Randy was referencing those same exact concerns about installing private drainage infrastructure alongside the public taking, or within public taking.
Ryan, can you talk a little bit about exactly what that infrastructure is? Can you go back to your drawing?
I can. So the two stormwater controls here are the two catch basins within the driveway to capture that last bit of runoff coming around the switchback here. And then as a result, we had initially proposed a culvert all the way discharging down to this wetland. We pulled that back and done some regrading alongside the Meadow Road. And that was talked about with Randy as well. Excuse me. And the intent of that was to lessen the amount or the length of the stormwater control that would need to be maintained and put it in a spot where the future homeowners would be visible to them. You know, when they're pulling into the driveway, they drive past it every day, just to facilitate inspection and encourage maintenance of that system.
Okay, and there seems to be an interfacing drain above that, somewhere around, I don't know, elevation 314 or thereabouts. My expectation, and correct me if I'm wrong, that during winter and freezing conditions, there would be ice control using some sort of salt or other, and that would go directly down to the proposed catch basin, and that would go down the swale into the wetlands. Is that correct?
It would go to the catch basins. There do some catch basins, so they will provide storage of that sediment. And then I think it's every 2 years is typical to have those pumped out via vacuum truck.
Okay, but I'm also concerned about the dissolved salt that you're going to use for ice control and snow control on that driveway, and that's not an insignificant grade on that driveway. I would assume that with the radius of curvature on it, just for safety, that you would want to keep it reasonably clear, but the consequence of that would be infiltration of dissolved salts into the wetlands. Correct? Or am I way off on that one?
No, I understand your concern. I think we'd have to look at that. I haven't dealt with we do catch basins to provide the total suspended solids removal, but I haven't gone further than that in any of my projects.
Yeah, I've taken a look at the salt concentrations in Great Brook running along 117 on a seasonal basis, and the effect of salt on the highway has a fairly significant effect on the surface water in that area, which is the basis for my concern.
Okay, understood.
One thing you may want to take into consideration is some sort of mitigating planting along that. But again, I think Randall Hegland and I jointly agree on the implications of putting private infrastructure for drainage on public takings. It sets a precedent. Not that there ever legally is such a thing as a precedent, but it is. And the whole issue about who maintains it and whether there really is control on that, and whether it would eventually end up being the town's problem, the Department of Public Works problem. Now, the significant changes that you made, if I recall correctly, are your stormwater basin that's indicated in the upper right section of that, in which would pick up drainage from the upper portions of that driveway, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And what component of the total driveway alignment does that pick up? Is more than half, or?
Well more than half. I believe it was close to 90%.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, I don't have that exact number for you, Bob, but it's the majority of the proposed driveway.
Have you run a calculation on what the drainage of that would be in a, I don't know, I don't know which storm you used.
We looked from the 2-year all the way up to the 100-year. There is some spillover in this spillway here. Starting in I believe in the 25-year storm, it just crossed over that emergency spillway. But then that water would be routed into this secondary infiltration trench here, and any spillway from that would end up down the gutter line into those catch basins that we were just talking about.
And what's the diameter of the culvert between the two catch basins at the lower section?
Those are 10-inch between the culvert and then 12-inch as an outlet.
Okay, that's my concern. I think and correct me if I'm wrong, Todd, if that also reflects Randy Egelin's concerns.
Yeah, that's a fair encapsulation of Randall's comments when I was there last.
Out of curiosity, well, more than curiosity, if you look at the trees that are not circled in light green on the lower left-hand side, there are 2 of them at about elevation 304 and 302, pointing in the upper right direction. Is there a need to remove them? And if so, why?
Are you looking here, Bob?
Yes.
So this is the regrading of that swale, that existing swale down on Meadow Road. So there is some grade change there. It's not super significant. However, we wanted to err on the side of caution. We are going to be doing some regrading there. So if the root ball was affected, we wanted to cover ourselves basically. So we
What are the diameters of those 2 trees?
Those are, I believe they're all 12 or 2 12s and a 10. Yep, 2 12s and a 10.
Okay. And is there a possibility of, well, how much do you have to, what's the difference between your proposed as-built and the original configuration, original elevations?
At those trees,
I assume that the elevations are in light gray behind that, but I can't read them.
that's correct. Yes, I'm sorry, it's hard to see. It's just over a foot of elevation change, about a foot.
Okay, a foot down, right?
A foot of cut, yes, sir. Yep. And then this dark line, this 305 is approximately where it catches back up to existing grade.
Okay, so in fact, unquestionably, it would hit the root ball.
Yes, sir. Yep.
Hi, this is Mark Case, the tree warden. I'd like to add a little something too. This section of road is very unique because it has no utilities on the street. So there's 3 lots that are in a row. The middle lot, which has been assigned a house number, which is house 100, still has no existing power. The proposed, I met with National Grid representative about mid-December, and the proposed route of power would come from the left side of this plan, and the guide wired pole that you see on this plan is close to where it needs to be. But then to service lot 100, they would put a pole on the opposite side of the road as well. All these trees that are proposed for the entrance of the driveway and stuff would be in the way of the power lines. They all overhang the road. They create a unique canopy over the roadway. So these trees, if they're not considered for removal on this plan, they're going to be in front of us again shortly for utility purposes.
And what are the chances of utility realignment to avoid that?
So we spent quite a few hours on site, and the last impact way to gain service to house number 100 would be if they could receive a variance. I'm not a variance, an easement from an abutter to put a guy wire onto private property. But no matter what, it's looking like at least the first row of trees along Meadow Road, because of the canopy, would have to go. Further up on this plan where you see to the right of the existing driveway, some of those may be able to stay, but for the first line up to the midpoint of the driveway, those would have to go to gain access to lot 100 or house number 100.
So we're addressing trees on a piecemeal basis rather than having an aggregate assessment of what the overall impact would be.
Correct. Unfortunately, house number 100 applied first and got his driveway permit. We had the public hearing for the tree removal, but the utilities were never addressed. In moving forward, the National Grid's thoughts were that if this approval of lot 7 and 8 happened, then it would be less impact for getting the power lines up to house 100. There still would be a break. It wouldn't be a continuous line. The other lot 6 would be fed from the opposite side. This would avoid cutting some pretty substantial large trees. And because this proposed lot 7 and 8, we were leaning towards, if this gets approved, then this would be the best route to get the power utilities to house 100.
So it would be very useful indeed to have an cumulative or aggregate assessment of what the total implications of all of the lots electrical infrastructure would have on the trees on Meadow Road.
Correct, but it's not like a subdivision plan. It's all individual builders, and it would be very nice to have a complete overview. Like I said, during our meeting, was, I believe, mid-December, that was seemed to be the less impact on Meadow Road, was to continue the power line from the left to the right on this plan, as long as the applicant of house 100 could receive that easement for the guy wire.
And has that been pursued?
No, I'm not. I assume that it was. I have no information if it has or has not happened.
Yeah, I can jump in here and add to that. The owner of 100 Meadow Road, which is the standalone lot in the middle, is working with the owners of lot 5 and 6, which is the lot to the north, the 2 lots to the north of that, for exactly what Mark was just talking about, doing an easement up that shared driveway to avoid having to run poles down Meadow Road and deal with all those future additional impacts for tree removal. That's something we certainly want to avoid. So I've been corresponding at National Grid for a few months, not with. They've been a little unresponsive, but I've prepared a couple plans for them, basically asking them what they need to see and where they need pole locations for those 2 lots. So I understand it's all part of one big project, but I would say that those are separate than the application that's here before you tonight.
Well, I guess you're absolutely correct. It's not a subdivision. But I think it would, at least from my personal perspective, be very advantageous to have the owners of the various lots work together and come up with a least impactious aggregate solution for the electrical infrastructure.
I agree, and that is what's happening between lot 4, 5, and 6 right now. They are working with that National Grid to address that.
So when could we see what the implications of that are?
As soon as National Grid gets back to me, I guess. Like I said, I prepared and submitted a few plans to them, and I'm waiting to hear back. I followed up several times.
During that,
This is, certainly a challenge since it isn't a subdivision. Not an atypical situation these days of coming up with individual lots, individual owners that in aggregate have more implications than individual lots because of a number of issues of infrastructure. And I think, although we don't have the guidelines, bylaws, or equivalent of subdivision regulations, we sure are looking for some collaboration among the owners in order to reduce the impact. And with that, I'll cease comment.
Okay, anyone else on the board have questions or comments?
So what does it mean if the drainage structures, like this, does someone on the board or DPW need to approve the drainage structures being in the public right away?
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of thinking the same thing, Mike. I mean, this is a scenic road shade tree hearing. Obviously, we wouldn't want to approve the removal of a bunch of trees if, it's not going to work with the plan, but I kind of have the same question, right? What, does the town somehow prevent private drainage structures, private drainage in public ways? And is that something that comes to the planning board to approve or disapprove, or is it a DPW issue? Todd, do you know anything on that?
Well, it's certainly not strictly within the scope of a shade tree and scenic road hearing, that's for sure. Whatever solution that they're proposing would either get accepted or rejected at the shade tree hearing here. But really that would come along when they're actually, pursuing their building permit and then the associated approvals. Especially if something here, because coming up with a shared driveway, that particular item would definitely arise from that shared driveway process. So it would be addressed, it just wouldn't strictly be addressed within the confines of this hearing.
Is that the planning board though, or is that building inspector?
That'd be going through building inspector, DPW, all that fun stuff there.
Okay.
But likely we would have some input and weigh in there as well.
Despite what I just said, in part though, the implications of the drainage do apply to the removal of trees.
Mm-hmm. It's an attached affiliate. I would call it like a peripheral concern attached to that. So it could be argued that it could be attached and therefore under the umbrella, but not strictly. But we would likely have some grounds, but that's a very odd question. I'd have to dig into the research more to really see exactly where analogous cases occurred.
Yeah, I mean, I'd just be, reluctant personally to say, okay, well, we approve the removal of all these trees, all the trees get removed, and then the driveway can't even be built.
Yeah.
where it is because we, there's some other, issue that hasn't been
explored, yeah,
sorted out yet. And then it's either, oh, well, trees are all gone anyway, or more trees have to be taken, or some other thing. I don't know if we can necessarily, prevent it because of that. Just my personal opinion. It's like, it would be nice to know that these other issues are okay with whoever they need to be okay with.
Yeah.
But, from my perspective, but.
I agree. It's certainly not something that could hold up this in its entirety. That's not within the confines of a scenic road hearing. But that would be occurring further on down a different process.
Yeah, but to Pete's point, this is a cart horse situation. It would be very tragic to assume that infrastructure is going to be in place, authorize the trees to be removed, and then discover that we're not correct in terms of the drainage infrastructure.
1000% agree.
100 will do.
That question was broached during our last meeting at the town hall that Bob was not able to attend. That we did mention that about horse in front of the cart kind of thing. And we chose to extend this public hearing for the shade trees.
Mark, I actually have a question. So on the utility lines, are we expecting another shade tree hearing for the other side of the road for some of those lines?
Yes, no matter what's even if the other lot house number 100 gets serviced from lot 5 and 6, there's still a hearing that's going to happen for lot 5 and 6 to get their power.
Yes.
It's just when we were there doing the site visit with National Grid, they had some issues with giving easements or putting utilities over other people's property that they don't serve. They have to, my understanding is they need to have the landowner needs to supply a direct route for their utilities and not necessarily across somebody else's property. They can do that with an easement from the other person, but it seems to be their way they like to conduct business is a clean shot from the public taking to that particular private land. So no matter what, we're still going to have a hearing to get power to 5 and 6, no matter what.
So that kind of leaves us with a decision on the removal of the trees, and the extent of the removal of trees to a large degree depends on a decision on the drainage. Therefore, we're working with incomplete information.
Well put.
Correct.
Well put.
Effectively.
So we need to, I guess, again, my personal perspective is we need to resolve the drainage right away, determine in whose jurisdiction and under what circumstances and how a decision might be made about that. And then on that basis, move forward with the tree hearing.
May I say something?
Sure, yeah, if you could just identify yourself for the record, please.
My name is Mohammed Al Hassan. I'm the owner of these two lots. So last week when we had the meeting with the DPW, he seemed pretty fine. He just wanted the swale to have like a French drain, so that it looks like a grassed area, not a stone area. So I mean, he seemed pretty fine with it when we were there. I don't think he had that big of an issue. Who else would I need to get it approved by? I mean, approval would happen when the driveway gets approved. The driveway won't be able to get approved until the trees get approved. It's like what came before, the chicken or the egg now? It's like we'll be running around, the tree is not approved, the driveway is not approved, the drainage can't be approved. It's like, how do I go about it then?
Yeah, sure. Appreciate your frustration, right? I mean, completely understand. I think one thing, we've done in the past is, when we have things that come before the board for decisions, we like to solicit feedback from other departments. So if the DPW director or whoever, I don't know exactly what the process is for the driveway approval, but if the DPW director has to provide approval for private drainage on public land, if he was to review this and basically just send a letter to the board or an email, right, to say, I'm okay with this, and we have that for the record, that sort of goes a long way towards the board soliciting outside opinion. I understand we can't, different sequence, different things have to happen, but if that's something that's kind of a concern, and if you're saying he's really not concerned about it, but he just wants this, he could just provide that to us in writing, I mean, that would, at least for me, go a long way to say, okay, the DPW director is in line with this proposal. You know, and then we have that in the future in case something comes up, and you have that in the future too. And then Todd, just for a shared driveway, what that goes, that doesn't come to us, right? That's
Shared
that.
driveways do.
Oh, they do.
Um,
Okay.
Well,
I can
in
never-
commons, they're just held to a different standard than common driveways. So commons are 3+, shareds are 2.
But we would have to permit a shared driveway.
Yes, in terms of the permissions, I believe.
Okay, I can never remember that.
That's quite right.
That's fine.
So if you like, Pete, if you like, I can, if Mr. Hassan wants to reach out to Randall Hegland or myself, I'd be happy to at least kind of solicit his comments and feedback on this particular application. I'd be happy to do so.
Yeah, that'd be good. I mean, it's great to hear he's participated in the meeting. He knows about the project. If we could just get, you know, specific question from the planning board about the, you know, private drainage on public, you know, public right of way. If he could provide us his feedback on that, then we can have that to refer to.
Sure. I do remember he brought up concerns about, of course, the maintenance and holding the applicant or owner accountable for the maintenance of said infrastructure placed within the easement. But I imagine he'll be echoing that in the memo I solicit from him.
Sure. And is that something that can be like attached to a deed, or how would that?
Yeah, it will be attached to the deed. It would be a rider within that. It would be functioning similar to all of the other rider restrictions we placed upon deeds.
So another comment based off of this, so this is a shared driveway. So there won't be like a HOA fee per se, but there will be in the deed some sort of common shared driveway, plowing, maintenance, and there's some sort of maintenance of the driveway.
And
Which
effectively an OMP
that-
agreement.
Yes, so that could be part of that, which would be part of the deed.
Okay, yeah, thanks. Typically, when we permit, you know, common driveways or shared driveways, we like to see that.
Yeah, so that is something that my lawyer already knows about. When I bought these lots, she knows that we have to come up with this. So I can't sell lot 7 or 8 without that being established as part of the deed.
Okay, gotcha, thanks.
We already know about that.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, the biggest thing would be getting, you know, some direct feedback on those questions from our DPW director,
Sure.
You know, to the board, and then I don't know, anyone else have any from the board or from the public have any comments or questions on this right now? Yeah, Mr. Troop, I see your hands up. Please feel free to unmute yourself and.
Yeah, Troop, 21 Meadow Road. I'm not exactly sure what to say about it. I guess the question that I have is about the functioning of the driveway, of the drainage on the driveway, once the thing is done, as compared with the single driveway going into 100, because that's horrible. All this season, not that this has been a bad season, but all this season, there has been ice or water all over the road as a result of that driveway. And the DPW has signs up at either end of the area warning people about ice. And this driveway appears to be very similar in the angle that it's coming to the road, which I think is a terrible angle. And if it's, but I can't tell if it's steeper than that other driveway is, but that driveway loads up the street with water, which is supposedly a bylaw violation by itself. And so this gives me no confidence at all. So I guess that would be either a desire or a question or something, but that it not allow water to go into the road, because it makes the road very unsafe to do that, not to mention being unsightly. One question that I had about the stone wall is that I believe the wording of the original hearing notice was for 40 feet of the stone wall. I didn't hear earlier in the meeting how many feet would be coming out or if that was changed, but I would hope that that's changed and that the 40 is not what they would take out and is not what's required.
Yeah, thanks very much for your questions, comments. I guess first on the stone wall, maybe the engineer, Mr. Proctor, or applicant could answer to that.
That has remained unchanged, given the angle that we have to create the switch back here, so it's still a 40.
If you think about 5 and 6, what planning board required them to do was to put back a lot of the wall that they took out, and basically right now it's as wide as the driveway, and I don't see why 40 feet would be needed even for this driveway where it's taking out those trees. That's not, where is the 40? Can you mark off the 40 feet on there to show what that width is? Oh, so it's just right there. Okay. Huh. That seems excessive, but really all of these projects, but especially this one, basically make the scenic roads bylaw ridiculous. I mean, there's just no way that they contribute in any way to being a scenic road. And a characteristic of Meadow is that it basically hasn't changed in the canopy and in the look of the road, even with all the houses that have been put on it in the 47 or so years that it's been since a house was put on the road. And it doesn't seem to me that it should be necessary to basically destroy the look of the road in order to put these 3 or 4 houses up here.
Yeah, sure. I completely understand your comment. You know, I think in this particular case is something that, you know, we as a board, as a town need to look at a little bit more, right? Because this sort of has come to us, you know, piecemeal, right? It was initially, I think, the A&Rs to create the lots, and then, you know, there was different, you know, driveway and tree hearings and different things, whereas, you know, had it kind of been looked at, you know, as a whole parcel, as sort of a subdivision or something else, you could have envisioned, well, just maybe one driveway serving, you know, all the houses or something like that. And I don't know, it's hard to, from a board perspective, to use the tools that we currently have in this kind of a situation, which creates this kind of non-ideal situation, right? Because, you know, when we get an A&R plan, you ask about driveways and things, you get some answers there, and well, it's an A&R, right? Approval not required. So, yeah, I don't know. I think that's something we have to look at a little bit more in depth with our bylaws and rules and regs to try to see what we can do to avoid this kind of thing going forward. Because, you know, as to what Bob was alluding to earlier, right? To see the whole thing together really allows, you know, the board to provide input and make the best decisions for the overall, you know, area that's being developed. Going back to the question on the water, any water being, you know, from the driveway going into the roadway, I'm pretty sure we don't allow that, or we don't, certainly DPW doesn't want that. Maybe Mr. Proctor, do you have any comments on this design and whether, you know, stormwater or melt, ice, snow melt off would end up going into the road due to this design?
Yeah, I just, obviously this has been a point of concern through the whole process, so I hope the board sees that with the stormwater basin, the catch basins, the infiltration trenches, we are cognizant of that, and we've been incorporated those stormwater controls into the design to limit that, to the maximum extent possible. Everything before you on this plan tonight is a result of those drainage concerns.
Yeah, sure, but I would assume that if, and I'm by no means an engineer, but those proposed catch basins, you know, down in the driveway, I assume that the driveway continues to slope down to the road beyond that.
That's right. There is a small portion. I believe there's language in the scenic road bylaw that allows a slight waive of the regulations. If I forget the language exactly, due to topography or something of that nature. So there's a small portion that is let go essentially.
Okay, yeah, I guess I'd also, Todd, want to get our DPW's director's input on that as well, especially if there's a neighboring lot that is causing issues. Not to say we, you know, have to take things separately, but if he's concerned about this design and whatever it says in our bylaws and any discharge of, you know, snow melt or water or whatever into the road, that's going to cause a problem.
Sure, yeah, I'll reach out to Randall and talk to him about the adjoining parcels meltwater concerns.
I'd like to pitch in here too. So last week when we talked about when we had the meeting, this issue came up quite predominantly. Like DPW guy was telling us this is a major issue with Lot 4 and that this is going to be pretty scrutinized with me. So this is the main reason why we came up with the construction sequence. Ryan, if you can bring up that construction sequence again, please. So one of the problems that you have with Lot 4, or what is it, number 100, is that the slopes aren't done. There's no drainage. There's nothing there. So all the water from the whole driveway is coming down. What I am suggesting, what I'm coming up with is I'm essentially building all the drainage, putting the base coat on the road, right? I'm lumen seeding the slopes prior to pretty much even putting the foundation. If you understand the sequence of construction here, I'm trying to resolve that quite a bit. So my drainage structures are pretty much all done almost prior to the foundation.
Okay.
And then major issue is the ice. Ice is usually in winter, right? In New England. Hopefully, I'm sold with this Lot 7 prior to September, October of this year. That's my goal. So all of Lot 7, this whole driveway should be done. Hopefully by the summer, if I can get the approvals done in time. That's my main schedule target.
Okay, yeah, thanks.
Hopefully we're not going into construction of the road or anything in the winter. I should be, my hope would be doing Lot 8 in the winter.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, thanks.
Yeah,
That clarifies a little bit of why this list was requested. So did this go to Randy, to our DPW director as well? Todd, this letter we got?
I believe so, but I'll make sure that's included just to jog his memory when I ask him for the memorandum.
Yeah, great. If he has any feedback on this for us, that's helpful.
Hey, Pete, since we have the construction sequence up, just a couple of questions on 4 and 5.
Sure.
And I guess Brian probably want to answer this. The temporary sediment basins, where are those going to be?
The basin will be in the place of the proposed stormwater basin. We just wanted, I'm calling it temporary because the completion of construction, when they stabilize the entirety of the lot, I imagine they'll want to do one last clean out before the transfer or the sale of the property.
Okay, and you're gonna have sedimentation mitigation around those and so forth.
That's right. Yeah, during construction.
And I noticed the slopes at the lower section of the driveway on the right side facing down are pretty steep.
Yep.
How are those gonna be maintained during construction?
So the intent of those slopes is to stabilize those. So that'll be stabilized with lumen seed early on in the process, so they have time to establish.
What's
Concurrently.
the slope of those? They look pretty steep.
2 to 1, there is a portion of 1 to 1 slope. Along the side, we do have the erosion control blanket along that portion of the slope.
Okay, and that's gonna be permanently stabilized with vegetation,
That's right.
okay? And you don't plan to put any riprap or stone in there?
No, we wanted to avoid that. That looks less natural than we want.
Right, thank you.
Just one more question, Todd. Procedurally, right? If the driveway permit needs to come to us for approval as well, is there anything precluding them being done at the same, the shade tree and driveway permit being kind of done at the same time?
Not as such as the shared driveway. That's a different permit class compared to simply an approval requirement that's granted through the shade tree. They're different classes of application. It doesn't make sense to mix the two together because one's effectively a consent from the board, which is the shade tree hearing, and the other is a special permit effectively.
Okay.
Should think about that going forward.
Yeah, it's just because it's all with the board, it's nice to do everything at once so we don't go back and
Yes.
forth with, as we've tried to do in some cases. Okay, thanks for
Yeah,
clarifying.
I do enjoy, that's why I prefer to have driveway, like shared or common driveway permits going concurrently on at the same time with the actual special permit for whichever item they're looking to do. Because that way, it makes sense to have both of those go together because as one issue arises, it tends to impinge and kind of interweave with the other attached processes as well. So it's kind of like rungs of a ladder. They do kind of overlap and connect alongside. But for this here, they're completely different classes of application, one being a special permit and one simply requiring board's consent.
So we have that application prepared. Could you accommodate them at one meeting? Because the shared driveway application does require input from DPW, from the Conservation Commission. And I think that would kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone relative to getting Randy's input on this as well. Randy Hegland.
Yeah, I'll have a conversation with Randall about that and see, and also with Rebecca from Conservation as well, and see if that's something that they would advise or what experience they have processing these applications here within Bolton. Grant, I just don't happen to have the experience, so I'm not in a position to advise on that particular bit, given that I've only been here for a few months. But I'll see what Randall and Rebecca can shed light on.
That's fine. Yep, just wondering. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, I just wouldn't want something to come up during that changes, a decision we would have made, right? I understand, okay, they're different processes, but even if we get feedback on it in advance of having a decision, and hopefully it makes it a little easier for the applicant too, to not run into another hurdle down the road that we didn't anticipate.
Yes. I mean, it's important to keep in mind that distilling down and thinking critically about what the purpose of a shade tree and scenic road hearing is to minimize the impact and avoid any derogation and deterioration of the scenic quality of the road that it's attached to. That's really the kind of the crux of the issue, which is why the board is merely demanded to provide consent effectively to what the applicant is seeking to do and find the application and find the process there that avoids the most damage and deteriorates the bucolic nature of the road the least. It kind of starts and ends there. But it always is a precursor to any future application there, whether it's a simple A&R or something like a subdivision. It's really the beginning part of the sentence, but it's rather narrow in scope and doesn't have a whole heck of a lot of teeth to it, as it were, as compared to a special permit process.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying.
Sure.
All right, are there any other questions or comments on this item tonight?
I guess, just one, Peter, it's Kent Troop again.
Go ahead.
I'm really concerned about what Barbara was talking about of the utility, what amounted the demands of the utility company. And I guess what I'm advocating is that the town not let them push us around. They tried to push us around 47 years ago on this road, and we prevented them from doing it by not even forcing them, by getting them to agree to stagger the poles going on opposite sides of the road. And they saved, according to them at the time, 40 trees by doing that. And so I don't know, I haven't seen any of the details of how it would access it. But if it's better, but if it saves trees to get access from up at our end of the road rather than from the Slater end of the road, it seems to me they ought to look at that. I think the town ought to force them to look at the minimally invasive, the least evasive approach to putting in the utilities, or else what's going to happen is what you were saying, which is that all the trees that get taken off of the driveway are going to be proven to be not necessary because they did something else different or whatever. So I would advocate that to really not just say, oh, the utility company wants it, so we have to do it, but to really push back at them on behalf of the town and the road.
Sure, understood. Thanks for your comment. Okay, well, if there's nothing else, I guess we probably should, just continue waiting the feedback on those questions from DPW director, and then I think we'll at least have all the information that we need. So you want to continue to our next, Todd?
Yeah.
Or sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Sure, and I would like to correct the record. A shared driveway is not a special permit, but it does have its own process within the Bolton Planning Board rules and regs. Apologies for my my poor choice of word, but the next dates would be 2 weeks from now, which would be the 22nd, and thereafter would be the 5th of April. Or even further than that would be the 19th, though I think that's not necessary to go that far.
Yeah, no, I think our next meeting should be appropriate if you can just when you reach out to DPW director, just ask if we can get the feedback prior to our next meeting, if that's if you could do that for us.
Sure thing. I will make that noted. This would be for the 22nd. I'll make sure to have DPW directors weigh in.
So I will make a motion to continue the scenic road shade tree hearing for lot 7 and 8 Meadow Road until March 22nd.
So would I and Ryan be CC'd on those emails, or would that be?
That's something that the original, when I reach out to Randall, I will contact him directly inside the office. The end result of that that memorandum I will share with Ryan and yourself, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So we did hear a motion from Michael. Is there a second?
Second.
Very good. Second. All right, very good. I will begin a roll call vote. I'll begin with Pete.
Aye.
Eric.
Aye.
Jim.
Aye.
Bob.
Aye.
And Mike. Aye. Very good. With that, motion carries. We will see you on the evening of the 22nd.
All right, thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
You're
Yeah,
welcome. Take
thanks
care.
for all the
We'll see you
info.
then.
We appreciate your patience with the process. Okay, moving on to other business. It looks like we have 4 sets of minutes for approval for meetings last year. I took a quick perusal through them earlier.
Hey, I just had a quick question. This is Jeff Motto with South Bolton Road. I just seeing, am I not on today's agenda?
You are not on today's agenda, sir. I've been waiting to have your application completed over. I have been communicating with I've been communicating with the assessors as well, and I haven't heard back whether or not they've received the check for the abutters list.
That was specifically for the shade tree.
Yes, it is specifically for the shade tree hearing.
Okay, sorry. I thought I was on today for the open Fosberg hearing, not scenic shade tree.
No, it's quite all right, sir. Once I receive the necessary documentation, I'll make sure that you're scheduled on the next available meeting.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Very good. Have a good night, sir.
You too.
Sorry about that.
No problem. No. Okay, so I was just saying I had looked through the meeting minutes that you provided, Todd. I didn't have any questions or comments or issues with them. I don't know if anyone else had a chance or.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I can't speak for the minutes, the older issues of the minutes there, the ones from August and September, given that I hadn't actually arrived in Bolton yet. But the others for October and November are pretty standard and clear. And Kristen did a fantastic job assembling them. For that, she has my undying gratitude.
I'll bet.
It's the most exciting part of my day, I can tell you that. And not being facetious at all.
Yeah, they look fine to me, so.
We do have to make individual motions for each of these. It's important to keep clear.
Okay. Is everyone else okay with these?
Yep, I am.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the planning board minutes from August 10th, 2022.
Second.
Very good. I'll begin a roll call vote. I'll begin with Pete.
Aye.
Eric.
Aye.
Jim.
Aye.
Bob.
Aye.
And Mike.
Aye.
Very good. Motion carries. Thank you.
I will make a motion to approve the planning board minutes from September 28th, 2022.
Second.
Very good. I'll begin roll call vote. I will begin with Pete.
Aye.
Eric.
Aye.
Jim.
Aye.
Bob.
Aye.
Mike.
Aye.
Very good. Motion carries. Thank you.
I will make a motion to approve the planning board minutes from October 12th, 2022.
Second.
I'm starting to see a pattern here. I'll begin with Pete.
Aye.
Eric.
Aye.
Jim.
Aye.
Bob.
Aye.
Mike. Very good.
Aye.
Motion carries.
And I will make a motion to approve the planning board minutes from November 9th, 2022.
Second.
Very good. I'll begin a roll call vote. I'll begin with Pete.
Aye.
Eric.
Aye.
James.
Aye.
Bob.
Aye.
And Mike.
Aye.
With that, motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, the only other thing just wanted to bring up to the board, I know the town caucus was held, I guess, last week, and there were no nominations for the upcoming open seat. My term is up, and as I think, I told you, Todd, and might have shared, not planning to run again, which has nothing to do with the planning board or the town or anything like that, just personal situation. And so I don't know if anyone, is there like an open advertisement, or does anyone, know anyone or can recommend anyone who might be interested in running for the seat?
I did reach out to, I'm so sorry to interrupt. I did reach out to the gentleman that expressed interest previously in the associate planning board position, the one that ran opposite Bob. He has not replied back one way or the other, despite the fact that I tried to be as persuasive as possible into getting him interested in doing so. But aside from that, I haven't had any luck trying to find additional candidates that are interested, frankly.
Well, would it be worthwhile for one or more of us to give him a call and have a conversation?
I don't see how it could not be helpful.
Well, if you could send us his contact information, I at least thought he was a pretty good candidate.
Agreed. Yeah, I'll get that over to you.
We also have an opening for an associate that we need to follow up on.
Indeed. And there is still an advertisement out there at the top of the planning board webpage that I posted actually quite a while back now that I think about it. I think that was over when Bob, when we elevated you over from associate to standard. But I'll make sure that that more attention is brought to that however I can.
You know, over and above having the results of the town caucus and posted, as well as being in the paper, it might well be worthwhile to put something in the paper about the importance of the planning board and serving on the planning board in a persuasive short article.
Yeah.
Somebody's interested in doing that, that's generally a lot more effective than something that comes out of town hall. Not that Pam doesn't do her job, but she does.
She's great.
But you know, something a little more personal and persuasive might be appropriate.
Agreed.
Yeah, GPT to write a persuasive essay for why you should do it.
Any volunteers?
No, I'll be glad to draft something up. And
I have I do have an old flyer that I had with me back from, I believe it was when I was actually interning over in Amherst. But I do have an old one. It's one of those standards. So you're thinking about joining the planning board kind of flyers. But if nothing else, that can get distilled into a brief little blurb that and personalized into a way that might be a bit more easily kind of grappled with. I'd say something that might change a few minds. Maybe it's worth a
doesn't
shot.
mention about long meetings and abuse.
But that's a bonus, my good sir. That's something
I was gonna say, don't let them watch the last few meetings.
That would scare away any sane person from entering this field, I'd say. I'm also not going to share with any of my, I spoke at an undergraduate event at my alma mater, trying to convince people to enter the planning discipline. I think I might have scared them all away, but
Yeah,
here we are.
Bob, if you wanted to write like a letter to the editor or something, I think that might be helpful.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Certainly couldn't hurt. Aside from that, I haven't had any more outreach, but if I see some good candidates come my way, I'll try my best to get them to at least toss their hat in the ring, see what can come from it.
No, and it is, you know, a very, very critical component, not just of community service, but forming the future of the community. I mean,
exactly. I try to evangelize the need for that at that undergraduate event I was speaking to. It's a direct, you can directly see the end result, and I like to call it, you can see your thumbprint on your hometown. And having served on the planning board in Barrie, where I grew up and went to middle and high school, it's you get to make some pretty kind of endearing decisions and things that have some lasting impact. It's worth it, and I try to be persuasive on that part wherever I can.
that and a lot of Excedrin. You can go on forever.
I use Aleve for my particular headaches, but sure, let's go with that.
There you go.
Last 12 hours.
Since I'm working on here, I'll just say hi because I might eventually be interested, but I first have to go deal with Todd next week. And I will eventually see you guys. We bought some property on Vaughn Hill Road and we're going to do a subdivision plan, hopefully with a lot less drama than any of this, but I will actually be living I'm actually living there. We're renovating the house right now, but
I'm just saying, if you could somehow manifest more drama, hats off to you, but that's you want.
I have no intention of doing drama, but I just wanted to say, I know how water works, and so you get a lot of comments. But I appreciate your help, and I look forward to seeing you at some point formally over the next few months.
Yeah, great, thank you so much.
I figured since I was lurking while you're having that conversation, I should at least introduce my. But I'll sign off now.
Very good. Have a good night, sir.
Bye-bye. All right. Well, anyone have anything else for this evening?
And with that, motion carries. Gentlemen, have a great night, okay?
Thanks,
Take care of
everyone.
yourselves.
Thanks, Todd. And thank you, Pete.
Night, everybody. Thank you.
Take care.